So I found out about this nonsense yesterday that Sony is remaking The Last of Us. Yeah, the minute I found out about this announcement, I was pretty sure that it was legit because they were talking about how apparently they tried to gather a development team or whatever and started concepting this nonsense right here back in 2018 or some shit. Then it didn't really work out, and they tried Sony Bend, who developed Days Gone. They basically tried to pitch a Days Gone 2. Well, Sony has some intelligence because Days Gone was a piece of shit, and so yeah, they immediately knocked down any chance of that being made, turned down the pitch, and then moved some of the Sony Bend staff to go work at Naughty Dog. I guess on this to be a part of this remake project for The Last of Us. So this video is more so for The Last of Us than it is the Days Gone 2, that pitch being shot down. Here's my thoughts on The Last of Us being remade. Now, as a reminder for anyone who doesn't know much about The Last of Us, The Last of Us it's one of the best video games ever made. There's no argument or debate to be had about that. It's one of the most successful video games ever made, which is the big thing. That's the important point. Won over 200 Game of the Year awards. Naughty Dog, which was already a triple A development studio, basically shot them to superstardom, even more than what they already were within the industry. And now they're like this god tier development studio that just makes Game of the Year games, apparently. Even though we all know that The Last of Us Part 2 was a piece of dog shit. To me, if you're going to remake something, why don't you remake this? Why don't you remake this bullshit right here? This game that should have been a lot better than what it was. Why don't you cancel this remake project for The Last of Us, a game that doesn't need a remake? And I'm going to explain why The Last of Us doesn't need a remake, the first one. Why don't you cancel that and put that entire development team on this and remake this entire monstrosity right here, and label the original release as fan fiction, because that's what it was. Why don't you do that? Because it doesn't make any sense to remake this game at all, other than they're trying to market the HBO series that's coming out. Sony, here's the thing about why this is a bad announcement. The Last of Us, this goes beyond The Last of Us, but The Last of Us is an 8-year-old game. It's not even 10 years old. If you look at the remakes for the Final Fantasy VII. So Final Fantasy VII, the original, pulling that up, came out back in 1997. The remake came out in 2020. That's enough of a gap right there. And they teased, Square Enix first teased the remake, the Final Fantasy VII, back in 2006, and then people had been asking them for years to remake the game, over 10 years. Then you have Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2. The original came out back in 1998. The remake for Resident Evil 2 came out back in 2019. 2019. Again, enough of a significant gap. And it turned out to be one of the best games that came out. Well, all of last generation. Then you have the Resident Evil 3 remake. Well, Resident Evil 3, the original, is a remake of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which came out back in 1999. Again, these are significant gaps to warrant a new version, a reimagining. Then you have Destroy All Humans. Destroy All Humans came out back in 2005. The remake to Destroy All Humans came out back in 2020. So that's a 15-year gap, and apparently they're in talks of doing a remake, the 2, which has not been officially announced. But the sequel came out the year after the original, back in 2006. So it would still be, by the time they announce that and it releases, it'll be more than, a 15-year gap between, the original Destroy All Humans 2 and the new version. The Last of Us came out back in 2013. Why the fuck would you do a remake to a game that's not even 10 years old? What sense does that make? And I've seen idiots try and justify this announcement saying, oh, the AI in The Last of Us was terrible. The gameplay was terrible. The gameplay was this. I had this issue, that issue. I had this whole laundry list of issues with this game, and it needs to be remade. No, it doesn't. The gameplay in The Last of Us was fine. It was a tightly scripted, narrative-driven game with some, core third-person shooting elements, but it was presented in the form of a survival horror game. So, yeah, it had controls that almost felt like, they were tank-like. Not Resident Evil, of course, but within the same ballpark. That's what the game was. Anyone who has a personal issue with that is like, that's your personal problem, not an actual issue with the game. The AI was fine in that game. There's nothing wrong with the AI in The Last of Us, except for Ellie, not really staying hidden and not, revealing your location or whatever. When the AI is looking for you, searching for you throughout the environment or whatever during the combat sections. Other than that, the game is practically flawless when it comes to like the gameplay and shit. Was it absolutely perfect? Of course not. None of these things are. But the point I'm making is there's no reason for a remake. I thought it was ridiculous that they remade Demon's Souls. But I even understood that one. That one made sense to me. It didn't make any sense to market the PS5 as, and have that as one of their top exclusives for the console when it first came out. That didn't make any sense, but I got it. Demon's Souls is old enough. The original came out back in 2009. Remake came out in 2020. So I get it. I didn't think it was fully necessary, other than the fact that Demon's Souls is not available really on any other platform other than the PlayStation 3. They could have just did a port of the game rather than a full remake. Even this, I understood it. The Last of Us doesn't make any sense at all. For the people who bought a PlayStation 5, for the people who are watching this video who have PlayStation 5s, if there's anyone that fits that description, you essentially bought a PlayStation 5 for these reasons. You bought a PlayStation 5 for a remake to a game that's barely 10 years old. You bought a PlayStation 5 for what essentially was a port. You bought a PlayStation 5 for new games that are going to be available on older platforms, and platforms that are going to play better than, the older, than any system, really. You bought a PlayStation 5 for new games that have yet to be determined to be of any remarkable quality. You even have morons posting videos why I'm convinced Returnal will be amazing. I myself think Returnal is going to be a decent game. I don't think Returnal is going to be worth $70 at any given point in time. It's a roguelike game. Why would you pay $70 for a roguelike? You bought a PlayStation 5, and this is coming from a huge Ratchet & Clank fan. You bought a PlayStation 5 to play games from franchises that are years and years old. Ratchet and Clank is not new. Ratchet and Clank started back in 2002 on the PlayStation 2. It's almost a 20-year franchise at this point. And once you've played a few of them, you've really played all of them. That's coming from a huge Ratchet and Clank fan. You bought a PlayStation 5 for a port of a game that came out last year that basically everyone has already played. By the way, this is going to be full price. Actually, it's going to be more expensive than when the game actually came out. The original release was $60. They're charging $70 for this. It's the same game with slightly better graphics that you're probably not going to notice much unless you pay like close attention to certain details. And now you have bought a PlayStation 5 to play a game that came out 8 years ago. Congratulations. All of this, all these announcements with Sony shutting down Japan studio and this supposed remake for The Last of Us, and some of their other strange decisions too, that don't make much sense, like the censorship shit. Announcement of all the all these veteran developers, producers that have worked for Sony for years, officially like completely leaving the company, never again to return. All of this, the only thing it does is it makes me glad that I didn't buy a PlayStation 5, and I still haven't bought a PlayStation 5. Oh, and all of this, by the way, is on top of the fact that the PlayStation 5 is still extremely hard to find. Will it get easier? Sure. But you still have websites that are posting restock updates. A semiconductor shortage, which is a big reason why Sony can't keep up with the demand. And not just them, but Microsoft too with the Xbox Series X. Motherfuckers still charging well over the original MSRP price at retail for this thing. You still can't walk into a store almost 6 months into this thing's life cycle and buy one of these. You still can't. Months later. As far as the remake goes to The Last of Us, I don't care. And neither should you.